Here we have it. Give the smarter people things. Even in Etzl, we had to bring that with. Right, so we're doing nicely here. Chof Aleph Omid Aleph. Sorry, I'm running a bit late, I'm afraid. Chof Aleph Omid Aleph, halfway down. We were talking last week about 2 days Yom Kippur, if you remember. Let's have a little bit more on this subject before we move to something else. It's literally halfway down the page, I suppose, just under. Rova have a rogil, the have a Yosef Batanisa Trey Yoma. Rova actually have a rogil. He was actually, it was his custom to actually have a fast of Yom Kippur for 2 days. We'll talk more about this in Halach in a moment. And if you remember, the rule was that as I say 99% chance we're going to have Elul being a 29-day month, you were allowed to use that and therefore make Yom Kippur, rather than have 2 days, make Yom Kippur, assuming Elul was a 29-day month. But he didn't want to take any chances, and he had the extra day Yom Kippur too. And the Gemara says, Zimna choda ishtakach kavose. And it once happened in his lifetime, there we are, that he was right. That for whatever reason, when we've spoken about this before, the Beis Din actually made Elul that extra day, which is fine. Because remember, the rule was, even if they do make Elul that extra day, and therefore in Eretz Yisrael, they are having Yom Kippur on what we would say that an extra day later, or a day later, the rule was that if you're outside Eretz Yisrael and you didn't know, you can assume the rule of the majority. Quite amazing. And it turns out we have this strange situation where you have, in Eretz Yisrael, they would have Yom Kippur on one day. A day later, in Chutz La'aretz, they would make Yom Kippur the day early, which is perfectly in order. You can use a principle of majority until you find out. Rava didn't want to take any chances, although he didn't need to do this. We'll see in a minute on Rabbeinu Hananel, which I think you have around the side. Might ask you, Peter, to bring Rabbeinu Hananel in a moment. Following on from this, it's the next one, Yosef B'tar Nisa. Have you got it at the end of the last narrow line of Rashi? Yosef B'tar Nisa Trei Yoma Im. I think you've gone too far. Bring it back down again. There we are. Im, first wide line. Im Leiloi Sehem, with their nights. Shema, perhaps. So he was going for 48 hour Tanis. Shema, perhaps Ibru Beis Din Esachidish. Maybe Beis Din had actually made Elul that extra day. Ibru Beis Din Esachidish v'yoyim achados or shelonu hu asiri shelohen. In which case, in Bovel, although in their calendar it was the 11th of Tishri, really it was the 10th. Back to our Gemara.
So Norman, how could they do 2 days without doing the nights? I didn't Rush's comment. Imre Sehem, and it's all they have to include the nights, don't they? Otherwise,
no, you're right. They couldn't. You might have thought, because as we said before, he didn't really. I can't see everybody here. Oh, hold on a minute. Yes, you might have thought that, as we know, the rule is you only have to have that 1 day, and we'll talk about this more in a moment. Therefore, what he was doing, he was really doing it just not really that strictly, because the rule was you only need to keep that 1 day. So maybe he was just accepting upon himself the day and maybe not the night. Says Rashi, no. He actually was there day and night. It wasn't just as like a zeicher of what might be happening and doesn't really need to do it. He did the job properly, and it was a full. How he managed, I don't know, but he managed day and night, 48 hours. Okay, and the Gemara continues. We'll come back to this Rabbeinu Chananel in a moment. Back to our Gemara. Rav Nachman Yosef B'Ta'anisa, beginning of the line. Rav Nachman also sat is a Tanit. Interesting word. That's the verb that's usually used. You can see that before as well with Rava. Someone who's actually having a fast is considered Yosef B'Ta'anisa. Interesting, this verb that's used, sitting in a Tanis. I suppose the point is sitting, introspection, if you see what I mean. Anyway, Rav Nachman Yosef B'Ta'anisa, beginning of the line. Kulei Yomed Kippura. Again, all day. Then what happens? L'orta, in the evening. Now again, he only had, in this case, just one day, not like Rava. But what happened in the evening? Osa Hahu Gavra, a certain gentleman, not going to be popular. But this gentleman arrived on Malay and he told them the good news. Lamacha, it sounded like he actually was it sounds like one of the shluchim, one of the messengers from the Bezdin. And what happened? Omalei, he told them, Lamacha, tomorrow, Yoma Rabba B'Ma'arova. In Ma'arova, that's the west, that's Eretz Yisrael. It is the great day, it is Yom Kippur. Omalei. So he said back to him, Rav Nachman, Mehecha at, where are you coming from? Omalei, he said, Mida Maharia. Interesting place. Omalei, so he said back to him, that word Mida Maharia, I can make out from that word two other words, or actually three words. Dam Tahei Acharisa. Dam Tahei, I suppose really, me Dam Haria, blood. Blood is going to be the ending. I hope not, he's saying. What does it mean, blood will be the ending? Have a look at, oh dear, lost it. Oh no, I'm there, don't know what happened. Have a look at Rashi, second wide line down. Dam Tehei Acharisai. He says, Hareini Mace. This could be very difficult indeed. He's talking actually maybe passing away. Al Yodcho. Shetazki Keni Lis Anus Beis Yomim Beis Leilos. You're forcing me to fast 2 days and 2 nights. So therefore, it sounds like he arrived before he'd actually had anything to eat after the Tanis. And therefore, the wording he's using from the place he came from, Dam Haria, this Dam Haria, you can also squeeze into that the words Dam Tehei Acharisa. His ending, referring to himself, could well be dam, could be blood. Noitrikoin shel Dam Haria. Noitrikoin means an acronym. So the place he came from, Rav Nachman changed, if you like, utilized that name of the place and said Dam Haria. It will maybe cause blood. In other words, can I survive these 48 hours? You've just told me today is Yom Kippur. Can I manage it? Back to our Gemara. Omalei Damte Acharisa, beginning of the line. And Kori Ole, he read or he announced, he said about this event, Kalim Hoyu Rodfedu. Remember that pasuk? A pasuk in Eicha. Swift were those that pursued us. What does that mean? He's saying he was using that pasuk. Of course, that's in Eicha, talking about the pursuers. In Eicha, we're talking about the Churban Abayis, the Beis Hamikdash, the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. He used that pasuk to say they were swift to pursue us. That's exactly what you've done. You've managed to get here very, very fast, and you're telling us In fact, it was a bit too quickly. Had you come the next day, then we would have said, either it's past Yom Kippur, or at least we would have had something to eat. But you were here that quickly that Kalim Hoyu Rodfena, those people pursuing us, very light-footed, and this could be our downfall because we are fasting 2 days. Have a look now, if you don't mind, Peter. Bring back the Rabbeinu Hanano, if you can, on the side of the Gemara. Excellent. Let's have a look. I'll scroll down. Oh, there we are. Where it says Rabbo, you may have to make it slightly larger so we can see that. You've got the right place. Just make it larger. I think you have to make it quite a lot larger. Could go up to. Let's see what that looks like. Boom. Yes. Thank you. Drop it down a bit more. Can you do that? Yes, a bit more. There we go. Bit more. There. Stop. Where it says Rabbo Havarogli, he's got Rabbo with a hay. Our Gemara has Robo. So Rabbo Havarogil, Yosef Tani Satre Yoma. Right? Zimna Chodo, on one occasion, Ishtakaf Kamose, it turned out like he'd I wouldn't say assumed, but something he was always scared of, it actually happened. Ki ovru, ki ibru leila elo. Ovru leila elo, maybe. They'd made Elul an extra day. V'hoya Yom Kippur b'yud aleph b'Tishri. And Yom Kippur was on the 11th of Tishri, according to their reckoning. The Habim, look at this, is very important. And this will lead us to the halacha. Dahabi machmir anafshe. He was very strict on himself. V'nokit treyomi. He held on to, means he actually observed 2 days. This is very important. This is milsa yeserusa ovad. He did something extra. Next line. V'lo chovahu olav. This was not obligatory. He didn't have to do this at all. Shelo hoya lo lacha. She really shouldn't have been concerned because, as we explained before, the ruling is for Yom Kippur, you do not have 2 days Yom Kippur, but you rely on the principle of majority. Majority occasions Elul is only 29 days, and you can therefore rely on that when you're making your calendar for Yom Kippur. Carry on. He shouldn't have been concerned with this. Ve'im choshash, if he is concerned, mida yesera, also he did something extra. Ve'lo shubach bo. It's not a praiseworthy thing doing that, because it's dangerous, and the rabbis did not ask people to do this. Now it's very interesting. I had with me the Shulchan Aruch. Thank you, Peter. We can go back now. Yeah, we are okay. Back to in Shulchan Aruch, the last halachas of Yom Kippur. Here we are. Siman Tov Reish Chof Daled. It talks about Motzei Yom Kippur and Ma'ariv, etc. Now, right at the end, it says the following. Says the Ramah, Yesh Machmirin, there are those that are very strict with themselves. La'aseh Shnei Yomim Yom Kippurim. They make 2 days Yom Kippur. He says this, the Ramah, Ramosha Isalis, V'yesh lo zeh haTorah, you should be mataneda, can certainly. V'ain linhog b'chum razu, don't do it, says the Ramah. It could be very dangerous. Fasting for 48 hours, not advisable. Says the Mishnah Berurah. It's very important. Ki be'emes midina ein lochush. Certainly today, there's nothing to be concerned with to have that extra day. Although we would have 2 days in Chutzroitz of Pesach and Shavuos and Sukkot. Da'anan bekiyin b'kvir diyacha. Certainly nowadays, we have a fixed calendar and we know all the dates. So in which case you may ask, then why do we always have in Chutz La'aretz the extra day of Yom Tov? Says the Mishnah Berurah, "Ve'ein oisin kein because minhag shenoagu avuseinu." Minhag avuseinu b'yodeinu. Could perhaps have a shiur on the whole subject. It's minhag avuseinu b'yodeinu, and the Chachomim wanted us, even though it includes all those extra brachas, to continue keeping 2 days in case the time may come and we may get confused with the calendars, etc. I'm not going down there now, but the rule is in Chutz La'aretz, even today, even though we got a fixed calendar, we still have 2 days Yom Tov. However, Ubiyom Kippurim with our current calendar, Lo Noagu Avuseinu came. Even in the time when they didn't have a fixed calendar, in Chutz La'aretz, they never had more than 1 day strictly, as we just said before. Why? Because the rule was, the rabbi said, you can rely for Yom Kippur on the majority, and generally Elul will be 29 days, and that's all you need to do, unless you know for sure when the date is. But you do not need to keep the extra day. So if that's the case, why should we today, in fact, now we have a fixed calendar, and we're only keeping the extra day, I wouldn't say only, we're keeping the extra Yom Tov as minhag avuseinu b'yodeinu, but the minhag then was only 1 day in Chutz La'aretz. So certainly it's unnecessary. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, Imkein Lama Ninhoig Anachnu. Why should we, and we can now understand this from the Gemara, why should we today, with our fixed calendar, have 2 days Yom Kippur? They didn't have 2 days Yom Kippur when they didn't have a calendar, as we've just seen in the Gemara. You rely on the majority, and therefore today, certainly we've got a fixed calendar. Do not have 2 days Yom Kippur. Says the Ramah, it's dangerous, and that is not what we want. In fact, he said it's a sakon. Of course, it could be, and that's the wording we used in the Gemara when they use this word dam hoyu. Remember, dam, from where he came, this individual. It's a dangerous thing, and therefore not to be advised. And people should be mataneda.
This is stronger. Norman, this is stronger than Mechsek Yehura, isn't it? Where it's
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, reeks of arrogance, so to speak. This is not.
It is worse than that. Why is it worse than that? Because it's dangerous. Yeah. And if it's dangerous, not just dangerous, it's a sakona. I'm sure the doctors here would tell us fasting 48 hours is not advisable. No food, no drink, and especially as we've seen here, night and day. Certainly today, that would not be advised, or quite the contrary. You tell people not to do it, and I say that's. But it mentioned there in Shulchan Aruch, because some people may have that custom, and he's telling people, please be mataneda on that, because I say we do know that there are rules about that anyway. As we know, people who are unwell wouldn't be fasting Yom Kippur. As long, one needs guidance and advice to explain when they are in that situation. But therefore, it's certainly not advisable. And David's raised his arm.
Thank you.
I can't hear you.
Is the implication that Rav Nachman, after making this rather withering response, then proceeded to fast for another day?
Now, that's very interesting. No. if you knew for sure, you've got no option in those days. That's the problem. Had he come 2 days earlier, then they would have known not to have the 10th Yom Kippur.
Sure.
Had he come a day later, even in the middle of Yom Kippur maybe, then, well, at least they've had something to eat prior. He seemed to have arrived bang in the middle where there was no opportunity. Now, yeah, you're right. I agree with you. If it was a sakana, then yeah, the doctor could say you can't manage this. And as we know, any situation, if it's a sakana, we would say the person doesn't fast. But assuming he was capable of it, and presumably that's what the situation was, but even then he's saying, you're putting me in a very difficult situation, because it might lead later on, the repercussions, I don't know what the repercussions are going to be. Even if I think I'm healthy now and I think I want to start doing it, it could be very dangerous indeed. That's what he's saying. So you put me in a very difficult situation. That's really what he's saying. It needs to be weighed up. But clearly, if it was a sakana, he would not be allowed to fast.
But otherwise, the implication is that he's going to fast for 48 hours now.
Yes, if he was capable and, it wasn't dangerous for him, then yes, he would do that until the time it became dangerous. Yes, he would. But that's very different to, you see, what we're saying, we're comparing this, nowadays.
No, I understand the difference, yeah.
Now we've got an additional point which says, then if they didn't know, they would have only had 1 day. And it was pretty rare they'd come bang in the middle and have to have 2 days like this, or even it was a possibility. So therefore, nowadays, certainly, we don't want more than 1 day Yom Kippur.
It seems quite harsh in a way to the messenger. It's being quite harsh. I mean, it's not as if the messenger hasn't done anything wrong.
No, absolutely. It's not his fault at all. Absolutely. All he's telling him is that, you've caused me a headache here. I know, you can't kill the messenger, but and obviously a play on the words there. He's from Dam Harrier. He said, the first thing, Dam Harrier, the word blood in there. Oh, wow, you really caused me a bit of a problem here. But yeah, no, not his fault, and he was only doing his job. The trouble is he was a bit too full of this reasons. He got there slightly too quickly or earlier than he thought. And Rav Nachman got caught. But the main point there also, though, is Rava or Rabba, according to Rabbeinu Chananel, and Rabbeinu Chananel makes it very clear that that's not the right thing to do. Interesting, although he was Rogil, Rabba, to do that. But again, that was there in those days where actually he might have been right by doing that, although he didn't have to. But nowadays, certainly not. Okay, on we move to a tricky piece here.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
sorry.
Somebody.
It's me. Hello?
Oh, yes, that.
Hi, sorry. Can I just quickly ask a question? Very quick.
Yes.
It doesn't affect the
calendar. The answer, though. It might be a shorter answer or not. Yeah, okay.
The calendrical, I'm not sure it affects the calendrical argument, but it's just, I don't know, you might have brought it up about extending a yontif, when you're allowed to extend and you're allowed to raise, like you can extend the Shabbat. And
oh yeah, that's called Tosfos Shabbat. Yeah, but Tosfos Yom Kippur does not go into a full 24 hours. Tosfos Shabbos does not mean having the whole of Sunday as a Shabbos.
No, okay, but no, I understand. But you're not well, actually, what is the rule there? So, what where's the limit? Actually,
no. There's no a limit. Nobody's expected to take it that far. There are some places you may find that Motzei Shabbos goes on with your Shalosh Shudas, and certainly in some of these Hasidic places where the Motzei Shabbos does go well into the night, and they're just enjoying the Shabbos, which you can do. which you certainly can do that, but you wouldn't be going beyond that. I mean, there's as we've seen that ourselves, this idea of Tosfos Shabbos, which applies both sides, beginning and the end, where we bring in Shabbos slightly earlier than sunset, and Shabbos, and we make Shabbos go out. If you see the Seisak, it's slightly later than actually Seisak Kohavim, and there were psukim for that. But yeah, so we extend it to a certain degree, but nobody would be expected to have a whole day as a Tosfos Yom Tov, and certainly not Yom Kippur.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Norman, just a very quick query. Sorry, you said ruled by the majority, because the majority of laws are 29 days, and therefore you're always okay having 1 day Yom Kippur. If that's the case for Tishrei, because of the short Elul, so the 29 days, why wouldn't you equally apply that to the first and second days Yom Tov of Sukkot that also fall in Tishrei? It would always only ever be 1 day.
Yes, it's true. Now, you can apply that. They said apply this rule for Yom Kippur because of the danger of fasting 2 days.
Right.
Otherwise, so it was up to, I say they could have done the same with Sukkot as well. But no, there is that doubt which day it is. And therefore, we're only for Yom Kippur, they're utilizing that principle because of the dangers involved of fasting 2 days. That's why. Otherwise, it's almost like they would have actually liked you to have 2 days Yom Kippur, because you don't know exactly which day it's on. And that's why we do find this minhag, and we find Rava doing it because he was scared. But what they're saying is we're not demanding this, because it's dangerous, and therefore we will say here, stick with the rule of the majority. So that's
why the messengers go out, isn't it? Answering Laurie's point. That's why the messengers are, because there is an uncertainty which needs to be.
Absolutely, there is the uncertainty, and really they would like to have 2 days. Yeah, they'd like to have 2 days Yom Kippur, and hence that some people do even have the minhag. It seems, although it's dangerous and people that advise not to do it, the Chachomim did not want to put people in that position. They said, no, rely on the majority for Yom Kippur, because as we often do find, we talk about sakonas nefashos certainly overrides everything, and there's a rule which says it's better. Even for Shabbos, like taking someone off to hospital, etc. We were very concerned. We'd prefer this person to keep many more Shabboses rather than sadly passing away on that Shabbos, because we can't be Mechal Shabbos for him. So that's very important. Sakonas Nefashos does override everything. Yeah. Okay. Back now to our Gemara. Yeah, another question for Malcolm.
He's on mute.
I think David first, actually. David had his hand up.
Yeah, I apologize for Googling, which is a bad habit, but I've Googled something that says that the Mi Yeshiva during the war, because there was a genuine doubt about which day it was, that some people in the Mi Yeshiva felt compelled to fast for 2 days on Yom Kippur. I know that's a different reason.
That's the reason there was, where is the date line?
Right.
That's the problem. It's a different question. Where is now you can't say you go follow majority or anything, because where you've got to make a decision here. And that's exactly what we were talking about last week. Very much, there is a machloka, or 2 weeks ago when we spoke about the date line, the final verdict was based on that Gemara we saw, if you remember. You take 90 degrees, which means it cuts through Japan and China. It's between Japan and China, where that date line, and that was going to be crucial. Other people said it's beyond, and therefore that was a problem. How do you paskin? And the problem was getting this telegram out in time. Getting the telegram, and it was the Chazon Ish in the end who said yes. We rely on that. Other people disagreed.
Yeah, Tukachinsky. Rabbi Tukachinsky. Was the
Rav
divergence?
Tukhchi, yeah, the Brisker Rob got it. There's wonderful letters about it and how they were waiting and comments going backwards and forwards and a big argument. Where is that date line?
It says here, I don't know if it's true, that some of them actually did fast 2 days.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't decide which way.
We couldn't decide which which line you're taking, the date line, absolutely. How they managed to do that, again, if it would have been a sakana, that would be forbidden.
Sure.
Absolutely. And it's, if it is a sakana, famous stories about the great rabbis going around hospitals and telling people, don't forget you've got to eat. And people feel, Yom Kippur, my whole life I've been fasting Yom Kippur, how can I break it this year? And they would go around and say quite the contrary. I think even the Chazal said we'd go around in the old days. No, there's a mitzvah for you to eat. Whatever we'll be gaining by not eating, you'll be gaining by eating. So
I think there was a similar story with the cholera, during the cholera epidemic with
yes, very good, quite right, yeah.
Rabbi Salanta, who made Kiddush on...
Made Kiddush, absolutely, made Kiddush from the Bimmer. Other people disagree, but yeah, as you can imagine. Yes, quite right. But yeah, if it was a time of danger, then things are different. Not that far away from what we've seen. People always used to davening in shul, and suddenly, over the past couple of years, it's been a different story.
The dateline problem for the Mir Yeshiva in Shanghai, wasn't that a problem every week with Shabbos? And was it just Yom Kippur the problem?
It probably was Shabbos as well, but then you could always, Shabbos is not there are ways around that. And China, other people doing malachas, etc. And they're just making sure they're not doing malachas is one thing, but not eating is something you can't. What are you going to do? Shabbos you can. Maybe you get people, the non-Jewish people doing malachas for you. So it's not so different. Put it like this: it's not impossible. Some people will quite like that, have the whole week not doing any malacha and just their head feet up. So yeah, it's not impossible. But Yom Kippur, I think the point was, I think it was close to Yom Kippur anyway. But you're right, you've had the same problem with Shabbos. Yeah. Yes, Malcolm's question.
Sorry to bring it back to this thing about the majority and everything. Was the famous controversy? Was it Rabban Gamliel, and was it Rabbi Yehuda? Was it somebody Judah? That he shamed him in public because he observed Yom Kippur on the.
Well, quite the contrary. He told him, "We've got to see you." Let's have a quick look here.
With your stick in your bag, you must come on what you think is Yom Kippur, with your stick in your bag, isn't it? Isn't that what he was?
Yes.
And Israel pass. Yeah.
It's,
yes, you have to. Right. Yes, you have to observe it. You have to do. Okay. Right. I understand.
We'll come to that in a minute.
But presumably they both had different dates in mind.
Yeah, very much so.
So
what the question was, could they rely on the witnesses? We'll come to that in due course. It's on the Chopay on a couple of months. But a couple of weeks, I hope. That Gemara in the Chopay, that's the Mishnah you're talking about. It's a Mishnah in the Chopay on the Aleph, where it talks exactly about Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Gamliel. That's the Mishnah there, where he told him to come with say desecrating Shabbos on what the day that he thought was Yom Kippur, and then Shabbos Yom Kippur. We'll see all about that in due course. That's that whole onward, a fascinating piece. But no, the other point was there was an argument. You've got to come to a decision. We're looking at something where a decision's been made, but we just don't know what it is. When is Rosh Chodesh? There was an argument whether or not you could accept the witnesses. So you've got to come to a conclusion. As we know, when it comes to halacha, you've got to make a decision. Okay, back to our Gemara. Says the Gemara, Sholach Sholach le Rapuna. Michael, could see him. Sholach le Rapuna. Ba Ovin Lorobo. Now, this is also fascinating Gemara. Kad Chozis. If you see Demoshcha Tekufas Teves, if Tekufas Teves, what does that mean? There are 3 seasons of the year. The winter season is called Tekufas Teves. It goes right up to the spring season, which is in Nisan. Now, the seasons of the year are based on a solar calendar. In fact, when you talk about Tekufas Nisan goes up to the 16th of Nisan, we'll see this in a moment, the Tekufa, and how we do this calculation, it's based on the, as I say, the solar calendar. The Tekufas Nisan begins on the 26th at the moment, the 26th of March. Okay? So, according to this, the Gemara is saying, if he sent him a message, he was out and he wanted to know about intercalating the year. When do you have leap years? He said, if you're fine to Kufas Teves, that means the winter goes right up to the 16th of Nisan. So at the 16th of Nisan, you're still in the winter. And that means, in our terms, it's prior to the 26th of March. Yeah? So the 26th of March, you're at the 16th of Nisan. Okay? Again, the 16th of Nisan, if it's going to be still into Tekufas Teves, which means it's going right up to the 26th of March, then that's too early to make Pesach. Having Pesach on the 26th, 27th of March is too early. What do you mean it's too early? How
Norman,
can you call that springtime?
Yeah, Norman.
Yes.
Yeah, as I recall, I think 2013, first night Pesach was 25th of March.
Oh, very good, very good. 26, actually, we'll bring that up in a minute. That's a very
first
good
night,
one.
yeah. And it's also, I think, about 1975, I think it was 26th March, first night.
Yeah. The big one, 2013 was the very tricky one because it was actually on the line. And we'll get to that in a minute, where we seem to be following, I didn't remember at the time, but there's lots of articles about that. That was on the line, and the conclusion was that it actually goes to the 27th. You can still have the 26th, according to the Balamor. Gemara actually asked that question. And the last time it happened was a couple of 100 years earlier or something, where it's actually on the 26th. So it doesn't mean 26 exclusive. But you'll see from Rashi doesn't learn like that. Rashi learns it's inclusive. So you have a problem with this 26. And that was a one-off. The next time he's been another 70 years or something. It's a very rare occasion. It was that early. Very good. Good call. So the point is this. Let's stick with the norm, which is, let's say, the 26th. The 26th of March, if that's on the 16th of Nisan, that is too early to be considered springtime, according to this. And therefore, of the Ovro Lahu Shosa, extend, he's telling him the rule, you really should extend that year. And if you can see that's going to happen, and what do? Have another Sheni in that year. Now, this year or last year, it wasn't quite that bad, but I say it was in the year 2013. And the reason why 2013 was like that, in particular, it's in the cycle. You remember the cycle of leap years? At the moment, it's 3 in the 19-year cycle: 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, 17, 19 of the leap years. So if you get to year 16, 2000, yeah, so 3, 6, 8, and then you've got 3 years without a leap year, going from 8 to 11 to 14 without a leap year. So everything's getting earlier and earlier. Yeah. The next one's going to be 17. So in year 16 in the cycle, which was actually 2013, it's the earliest it can be in the 19-year cycle. And that time, 2013, it was even earlier than other 19-year cycles. So everything came together to make it that early for, I'll say, the 16th. But the rule is, if it gets that far, then you really should be making an actual, as we say here, making an Adar Sheni in the year. Continue the Gemara.
Can I just know one point? So I got my hand up. So how do they count? So it's got to be by the 16th of Nisan. That's on the lunar calendar. So how do they calculate the date of the Tekufas Teves? On what basis was that?
On the 365 and a quarter minus, yeah, it's spot on. It's 365 days. It's a normal full solar year.
Yeah. So starting from when? So when does the solar year start in the Jewish calendar then?
When do you go back to?
Yeah, because you're saying if they see it extending to the 16th of Nisan, then you intercalate an extra month. But I'm saying, when do they?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're changing the calendar, Gregorian, Julian, it's always that day. If you change the calendar, of course, the date will change.
But I mean, in the time of the Gemara, how are they setting the Tekufa of Teves? So what calendar are they using for that? The solar calendar?
Yes. So they've made a decision that it will be on this particular date. And then from then on, what they did is they've always got the 365 quarter, actually slightly less than the quarter, isn't it? And it's extended from then on. So there's a decision made when the first one is. That's the beginning of the season. And then from then on, it would just be extended outwards.
So they must sit down, sorry to hog this, but when they decide the beginning of the counting in the 91 days or whatever, what they sit down on Rosh Hashanah, I mean, what's the, I don't quite understand how they synchronize.
No, it's true. You've got to make a decision when your start point. In other words, if we'd be sitting today, we'd be sitting around and deciding this is where normally you talk about an equinox and the 21st of the 21st. So it's round that equinox time they want to make. Slightly later than that, they want to make the season. So it's linked to longest day, shortest day.
So they had a working solar calendar as well then.
Yes, very much so.
Sorry?
Yeah, it's that a solar calendar. I mean, you call it whatever you like, whatever date you want to call it, but it's round equinox time, and then from then on they're just counting 365.
Yeah. Okay.
Like
thank you.
Equinox 21st, 22nd, December. It's around there.
So I guess the Gemara wouldn't talk about months. The year would be divided into halves or quarters, but the Jewish month is a month. We wouldn't have 12 of these.
No. The solar calendar is the 365 quarter. In fact, slightly less, divided by 4.
Yeah, it's not months.
No,
No, but Norman, didn't you mention there are solar months? So there are solar months. We did this a couple of months ago, didn't we? There are things. Something called. Sorry, is that something else?
Of course, you can divide that. You can divide by 12. You're right. I mean, you're not actually giving it a name, but yes. like we've said this is going to be Tekufas Nisan and Tekufas Teves. All you need to do is take 365 and a quarter, divide it by 12, and then just add those extra days, and that would really be called Tekufas Teves. So you're right, I'm going back on what I said before. There are 4 main seasons. It's a year divided by 12, not 30 or, oh dear. Yeah, not 30 or 31 or 28. It's a straightforward dividing by 12, and there you'd say that will be a solar month. But the 4 we normally use would be just the 4. You talk about Nisan, Talmud, midsummer, the midsummer Tekufa, the spring and winter. Yeah, so you'd have those 4, but you can utilize, if you wanted to, you'd say that's the Tekufa, but then you wouldn't use the word Tekufa. Normally, you just find that these Tekufas being used. You could go further, divide it into 3, and then you just go through the months of the year. But the big ones we're busy with, I say, is Tishri and Teves for midwinter. And now we're going into the Pesach one, which is Nisan. So what he's saying is, if you find that this Tekufa, and obviously they would tell people when the Tekufa was, or you could work it out once you knew where the starting point is. If that is going to be on now we'd call it the 26th, if it's going to fall on the 16th of Nisan, then that means you're not having Nisan in this springtime. That means still winter. It's still winter. If you've gone right up to the Tekufa only beginning in the 16th, you want the Tekufa to start earlier on in the month of Nisan. That's the principle. Yeah, and he said, don't worry about it. Although the other people disagree with this principle, you don't just look at the calendar, you look about other things, and you can have things which can overrule just the Tekufa. You could disregard just the date if you wanted to make it early. You'll see in a minute, the Gemara says here that do not be concerned below Tochushlam. Don't be worried about anything else. Shomar es chodesh ha'aviv. Observe the straight translation of that is we're talking there about the spring month. We're talking about Pesach, but the word chodesh, instead of Shomar es chodesh ha'aviv, you could also learn chodesh chodosh, new, the newer part of the month. When is the newer part of the month? The first half of the month, up to day 15. Yeah. So make sure Shoma Oviv Shel Tekufa Sheyahei B'Chodesh Nisan. Ensure that spring of the Tekufa is in Shehi Yahei B'Chodesh Nisan. So the Tekufa's got to come. Yeah. The Tekufa, this date, this 26th, has got to be earlier on in Nisan. We don't want that date being later because it means, therefore, that your Pesach will not be in spring at all. It's still part of the winter season. The winter season goes right up to, like the equinox date, 26th, slightly later than the equinox. That is still considered winter. Once you go beyond the equinox, then really you're into spring. But that's got to happen in Nisan, in the first half of Nisan. If it happens later in Nisan, it means therefore your Nisan is really in the winter, and you don't want Nisan to be in the winter. Yeah. Other calendars, so the Arab calendar, you talk about the calendar which they still follow the moon, but they don't change it to ensure that the solar, the lunar moon. The solar and the lunar calendars link up, but we do have to ensure that they both fall together, and therefore let's have a look if we can start at least this. Have a look at Rashi. Kichos is the Moshchot Kufas Tevis at Shitz of Nissen. If it goes up to the 16th. Now the question is, does it mean inclusive or exclusive? Rashi is saying, look at this. She'ain to Kufas Nissen Oferes Ad Yud Tezayin. If you'll find that the Kufa only falls on the 16th, says Rashi, V'kaimalon, and we hold the Yomat Kufa Maschil. On that day it begins. Not everybody agrees with that. Other people say it's the next day that it begins, which would be very good, Michael, for your 2013 year. Rashi says, no, that day is inclusive. Kurab Yosi to Omahochi Beperakama the Sanhedrin, that the day of the Tukufah is the first day of that season. It's not the next day which starts the season. Nim says Tukufah's Tavis. Therefore, if that happens, you're now finding that the winter season, Mosheches, is being drawn out until the 16th of Nisan, below Ad Bichlal, not including that. If it's already the day before the 16th, that means you're having Nisan in the winter. Therefore, you've got to have another month to push out and to make sure that a Pesach will be falling in the spring rather than the winter. So the turnaround point is the equinox, just close to the equinox. Pesach must come. Pesach must come after that. If Pesach comes before the equinox, then it means you're too early. So continue Rashi. Ovrolahi shosa. Make sure you intercalate that year. Ka'acherim, like the view of Acherim. This is only one view suggests this. The Islu Haisvara in Sanhedrin. The source of that is Gemara Sanhedrin. Below Tochushla. Don't be worried about it. Let's see what we can do with this Rashi. Lameima, have you got it? Lameima to say Yichidohi. Maybe it's only an individual view. Not everybody holds this view. No, says the Al Gemara, we are actually paskening like that view. Below Navid Kavos. Don't think we don't follow that principle of this view mentioned in Sanhedrin. We do hold that, and that is going to be crucial. Just looking at a date, and if you find the solar date is going to be, in this case, we're talking the Tekufa comes after, that will be enough of a reason to make sure there will be an extra month. We should behave like this view of Acherim, the Messiah Lekro. We've got a posuk to support this. The posuk says, Shoma, the word Shoma is missing. Should say Shoma es Chodesh Aviv. Observe, look after the month, the spring month. It should be in the that's the point. Bechidush, the earlier part of the month of Nisan, must be in the spring. That is the turnaround, the point at which you're changing from winter to summer, round the equinox, as we said. Shenissen shel Chama nichnas bo. There's your Nissen of the Chama. Not Nissen of the moon, Nissen of the Chama, which means Nissen, which we're talking about here, of the solar calendar. Shenissen koru oviv. Nisan is called spring. Al Shem Bishul Hatvua, because everything's ripening. Ubishul Hatvua Eino Ela Lecheshtoina Shelcha. Ripening does not feature together with the lunar calendar. It's a solar calendar. Yeah, it's summertime, wintertime, spring. That's solar, nothing to do with the lunar. What you've got to do is bring the lunar calendar in line with that solar calendar, whether it's summer, winter, Acha, Cheshvan, Achama, all those things follow, of course, the solar calendar, follow the sun. Hey, the Shiur HaKosov, Rashi really going to town to explain this point. The Pasuk has warned you, L'shomro, to guard it, Shehei Bechidush. It's got to be in that Tekufa, the turnaround point must be in the earlier part of Nisan. That's called the Chidush. If you talk about this word renewal is always a lunar concept. Because it renews itself. The moon renews itself. So the crescent, no moon, full moon, it's renewing itself. The Toldo Sahar, with its renewal, actually a new birth. For Ashwin and Krop, the Pasuk's telling us, Shehei Nisan Shel Chama, the Nisan of the solar calendar, the Soch Yud Dalad Yom Lemoilet Havana, in the first 14 days. Remember, the first 14 will be the Chiddush. Once you get to 15, it's already, as we say, it's 29 and a half. So it's got to be the first 14 days. Shehu Adayin Michidush Halavona. Next line, Yud Dalad Ba'elech. If it's after the 14, it's now not considered the new moon. You're now out of the new moon. You're into the old moon. It's an old moon because it's now, it's not waxing anymore, it's waning.
Let's go back 2 lines. I don't get this because it says Ein Chidush Elab Levana, and yet we're speaking about these seasons. The Tefillah is related to the sun, so I've lost the what.
No. What he's saying here, when he talks about the Chidush Levana, this word Chidush, renewal. Renewal is a word which is relevant to the moon, not the sun.
Yeah. I understand. But so when in 2 lines above it says Hashem Bishul Hatzvur, Eina Erlich Cheshbon Shulchana. The harvest.
That's right. You've got to put both together. They've got to go hand in hand, and therefore the Bishul Tavur should be in the Chidush. Shomos Chodesh Ha'obiv, which means make sure it's in the earlier part of the month of Nisan. So the spring must be in the earlier part, the first 14 days of the month of Nisan.
So this
right, that's what it's saying.
Is telling us to combine 2 things, really, isn't it? That's what the implication is. When you say
well, yeah, there are 2 things. They're both working here. You've got the Bishul Tavua, which is, of course, related to the sun.
Yeah.
But you've got the Chidush, and that we're focusing on this word, Shomos Chodesh Ha'obiv, which means the Chidush. The word Chidush, renewal,
no, I understand that. So the Pasuk is telling you 2 things.
Concept.
Yeah. The Pasuk is telling you 2 concepts at once, isn't
it?
Oviv being for the sun.
Yes.
And Chidush, yeah. Okay, fine.
I'm just going from Yom Yudalad Va'elech Yishonahi. Now, one extra point that Rashi's going to cover here, as if this wasn't complicated enough. One extra point. Why did the Gemara say the 16? You've just told me that the Chiddush is the first 14. Once you get to day 15, you're beyond, after, as we know, it's 29 and a half days. Yeah? A lunar month is 29 and a half days. So once you got to day 15, you're too late. So why did our Gemara say 16, not 15? Says the Rashi, says Rashi, you don't need a whole month to bring it in line. What you can do, Adar normally being a 29-day month, if you make 29 Adar a 30-day month, then you've already pushed it out. You with me? So if it's just on the 14th, it's got to be in the first 14 days. If it's on the 15th, if the Tukufa is going to be on the 15th of this, a very easy remedy. Have an extra day. Have an extra day for the month of Adar. And then by the time you get to the equinox, it will be on the 14th. You with me?
Well, no, because
by adding one day to Adar, you've then moved from the 15th, you've called the 15th, now the 14th, so that's easy.
But was that within the gift of the Chacham in the month was up to the rabbis to institute, but the month, but the length of Adar was dependent on the moon.
Yes, it is. On top, we said this before, although it's dependent on the moon, it's up to the rabbis when they want to make that month. Now, you're right, it's not, totally in their hands. It's either going to be a 30-day month or a 29-day month, right? And we said before, the rabbis can overturn the witnesses, or they can just disregard the witnesses, and they can make a 30-day month. This would have been another occasion where, although you would have expected Adar to be a 29-day month, if it turned out that the equinox or the Tkufa was going to be on the 15th, a very easy way to make sure it would be on the 14th was add a day to Adar. If you add a day to Adar, then the 15th in your calendar now becomes the 14th.
But wouldn't it be isn't it preferable to be Mekadesh the Chodesh on time for the mitzvah? And because they'll have to make the extra month the following year. The next year will be a leap year then.
So rather than have a whole new month, there's an easy way out.
What's wrong with the whole? What's wrong?
Right? It will be
what's wrong with the whole new month? It seems to me it's a little bit. It's not ideal to turn the witnesses away and to defer the mitzvah of the new month.
Agreed. But what they're saying, on balance, rather than have a much longer month, which of course will push everything out in the coming year, we don't want to do that until we need to do that. And we need to do that under this circumstance. That's what we're saying. Quite right. Let's just finish that off if we can. The Tipul Atkuv Yoda Abukashi Bo Beyond Tes Zayin. Got it, beginning line is Tes Zayin Benison. If it comes on the 16th, there's no way out. You're forced to have a leap year. Yeah? Lo dailon be'iburi shel Adar. You won't have just pushing it one day. With Adar, you'll bring from 16 to 15, and that's still too late. But therefore, in that circumstance, if it falls on the 16th, there's nothing you can do other than making a leap year. And then if you do that, you'll find you'll bring it right foot back. Rather than being on the 16th of Nisan, you'll bring it into Adar Sheni, which is fine. You can do that. The Tkufa then, so then by the time you get to Pesach, or the first month, the first part of Nisan, Nisan will be in the spring. Nimtza Nisan shel Chama, Moishech B'Soch Chodesh Nisan Halvona. Whoa, tricky bits here. If he gets to the 15th, Ma'abrim es Adar. V'chimatzia letes Zayin, Ma'abrim es Hashoma. One more Rashi. Shoma Oviv shel Tkufa. Dahainu Nisan shel Chama. Shei bechidush Nisan Albona. So again, Shoma, observe, Shoma es Chodesh Oviv. And the Chodesh goes with the earlier part of the month of Nisan, is when you've got, or you can have it earlier as well, but you've got to have the earlier part of Nisan in the spring. And spring means at the time of the Tkufa. But if the Tkufa is going to be in the second half of the month of Nisan, it means the majority, the earlier part of Nisan is in the winter. You don't want that. So what you're going to have to do is make an additional month. Is that all right? So do Chazor on that. Tricky, but that's the ruling he was giving him. But interesting about that day, and of course, I say it goes to the wire when you get to that year, like 2013. But otherwise, you were, so in other words, if you're planning your holidays, you can be sure, if you're going away the beginning of the 15th of March, that would, or what shall I say, 15th, yeah, or the 20th of March, that will never be Pesach. You'll never find a Pesach earlier than, as we've said here, 26th of March, but it will always be after the 26th of March. If it's earlier than the 26th of March, it means really that the first half of Nisan is in the winter. And you know, on that Shomar, observe the Chodesh of it, the earlier part, it's like in two ways you're learning this, the earlier parts of Nisan to make sure it falls in the spring. Now, I know that was tricky, I'm afraid. I hope that was all right for people. Time to do a bit of chazor on that, I would have thought. Peter, we did have something, but should we leave that for next week? Given this, and you can get into that quite easily, can you? What I sent you? Yes, and yeah, there was something I wanted to show you, but maybe when we get, all being well, to the end of this Omud, then we should we can show that that attachment I sent to you. Okay, is that all right? Tricky, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. The good news is that as we turn the page, we're out of all these calculations with the moon and the Kiddush, Chodesh, etc. We move on, still dealing with Rosh Hashanah, still be Machalel, but not into the calculation side of it, which was tricky. Dateline, that was on the previous onward. So thank you very much, one and all. Good to see you. Good to see you. Malcolm, you're well. Good to see Michael there. Simon, looking good? Thanks. Okay. Good. And 1 minute, anybody else? I've lost it a bit, I think. Gallery view. Yes, how are you, Sam? Well? Good. Yes, Sammy as well, looking good. Sammy's going all right with it, and Charles with your the new cycle. Good. Well into brachos. Good stuff. Right, I wish everybody well. Enjoy Devon. Those people down in Devon.
Yeah. Next week.
Next week we're okay.
Thank you, Norman.
Right.
Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Norman.
Wow.
Thanks.
Keep well, one and all.
Thank you.
Oh, quick question, Peter. While you're here.
I'm here.
It's more of a technical question. People, that if they can stay, by all means. Mark, you're well? Good. Keep well, everybody. Yeah, quick question for Peter, actually. So more of a technical point. And people are welcome to stay. If I just tell you, for example, let's say next week, with Chof Aleph on the base, could you go into Hebrew and download it yourself, or do you always want me to attach it?
So, well, I can do that myself, but I'm very reassured when you send me the link anyway.
Because okay.
It would be highly embarrassing if I got
the wrong receptor or something.
Kuf Gamel on the base by mistake.
Okay, fair enough. So you prefer me to send the attachment? Okay, that's fine. Very good indeed.
What's the weather like, Norman?
How are you keeping?
Okay, what's the weather like?
Oh, very warm here at the moment. Yeah, we had 19, 20. I mean, for January the 10th or 12th or whatever it is. At the moment, are they expecting a bit of rain over the weekend? I mean, you know what it's like. When it rains here. There's, cats and dogs is the wrong word. It rains, and you've really got to get out of the way. But then when it doesn't rain, you're back to, it's very pleasant weather. But I think there's probably still waiting for some more rain, I think, at the moment. Meanwhile, everybody's well, and, as far as the virus and stuff, I know the numbers look really moving upwards, aren't they, here as well? But Baruch Hashem, nobody's seriously, I think the numbers of serious illnesses are not that high. but nevertheless, like that behind us.
They think it will peak in Israel in 2 weeks' time.
Oh, really?
I was reading that in the Haaretz, I think. Or maybe it was Jerusalem Post, I can't remember.
When you say peak, you mean the number of people getting the...
Number of people contracting it. I think you were up to 23,000 in a day now, or something horrible.
Although those people, I mean, it looks like they're not seriously ill, but nevertheless, yeah.
But we're up to a stunning number per day. Is it?
Yeah, I mean, incredible.
200,000, something like that.
And when do they say the peak will be in England? Did they say?
Where did they say what?
When they're expecting the peak?
Well, Mervyn really should be answering this, but I would say it's between 2 and 3 weeks' time, was what I read today in the Times.
It'll be when Tekufa's Teves is finished.
I'm sorry?
It's when Tekufa's Teves is finished.
Oh, right, when we get into the springtime, get into other Shani.
Yes, at the end of Shabbat is the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
At
See
the
you
end
next
of
week.
2 weeks' time, yeah. Once you get into Adar, you mean, it'll be good news, hopefully.
Thank you, Norman.
Okay, keep well. Malcolm, you're well. Good.
Yep, all good. Yes.